Well, welcome back to 2K Way. All right. Well, welcome back, and this is Paige here talking. Because I almost forgot to introduce us. This is my name is Paige. This is Peyton here. She's my sister. It's like I've never done this before. We talk about true crime and weird shit. So trying to get the giggles out because this is not a very pleasant case.
No,
this
one's a very rough one.
Oh, it's very rough.
Yes. So
and 2 parts. So
yes.
Sorry about that. There's just a lot to fit into one, and Peyton didn't. Again, she didn't want me to do another Lisa Montgomery, Bobby Joe Stinnett one. So sorry. Sorry. So a couple things. Peyton has to do a couple corrections from a couple of our previous episodes really quick.
Yes. So I had someone comment on the Seth Pravaki episode that went to high school with him, and the way that I was pronouncing it was incorrect. It is Pravaki, not Praveki. So thank you. I'm sorry I don't have your name pulled up or anything, but thank you. I really appreciate that, actually. Also, someone did correct me on the Peter Sutcliffe part 1 and said that I got Jean Jordan's age incorrect, and she was actually buried on her 21st birthday. So she was actually 20 when she was killed. So apologies for that.
Yes. And thank you guys for correcting us as well, because we never want to give bad information. And you know how good we are at pronouncing things, aka we're not very.
I know. So bad.
Thank you very much for those corrections. We always want to make sure that we're doing and saying things correctly. So
yes.
Otherwise, I don't think we have any other info to share. So
no, let's just hop right in, because this one's going to be rough. It involves children.
Yeah, and I'm about to tell y'all that. So this is the Oakland County child killer is who I am covering right now. And I'm coming at you with another unsolved case.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I'm really not sorry, because the more these cases are talked about, the better that maybe someday they can be solved. This one is really, it's a doozy, because it maybe ties into a whole other case that came crashing down around the same time as the Oakland County child killer or killers' reign of terror. This all took place between 1976 and 1977. So not only does this case, obviously by the name of it, covers children being killed, it also covers possible child pornography and molestation. So I fully understand that if these 2 episodes next to you need to skip, totally understand, because this, trigger alert, it's not good.
Yeah, but, and we made a pact when we kind of started our podcast that some other podcasts don't like to cover cases about children, and we kind of made a pact that we wouldn't wanted to cover any case. Like, it didn't matter who it involved.
Yeah,
because
well,
monsters are real and they're people.
Exactly. And the more it's talked about, especially something like this case, because I'll talk about it in the 2 episodes, but there is still an active investigation going on with this case, with these children that I'll be talking about. So that's another reason why I wanted to get this one out there, because hopefully if it's talked about more often, hopefully someday it can be solved. So the families, I mean, they need to know, they need some closure. So I watched the 2-part docuseries. It's called Children of the Snow. It's on Hulu and Amazon Prime. I also watched a 5-part docuseries called Child Killer on YouTube, And I mean, I got a ton of information from both. I really highly recommend watching them because it's just a whole big thing piled together on not only who possibly was the one to do this, but like I said, this child pornography ring that I will also be talking about as well. I hate that I'm saying I'm talking about child pornography, but it ties into all of this.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
So there was also a book. It was called The Snow Killings Inside the Oakland County Child Killer Investigation. It is by Marnie Rich Keenan. I didn't get a chance to read the book, but the author was interviewed in both of the documentaries. So definitely watch those.
Okay.
Highly recommend. So, because it goes back and forth between things and it's just nuts. So, first off, I'll start off with where the whereabouts of Oakland County is. It's in Michigan. So, when you search how many cities, because I did, are in Oakland County, it says 62 cities. But my thought was I was going to list all of the cities and towns in Oakland County, but I'm not going to do that.
No, please don't.
What I found out, what I found out, it was actually Oakland County is in the northwest part of Detroit. So that's why it says there's so many cities, because it's all suburbs of Detroit, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay.
Some of those suburbs I will be talking about and where some of the kids were from and found. So it all starts in 1976 with a 12-year-old little boy named Mark Stebbins. He's from Ferndale. He loved everything military. He collected toy soldiers, and he actually wanted to join the Marines when he got older. Like he was
little toy
he had
soldiers.
a plan.
That's so precious.
And he loved everything military. He liked military and war flicks. Like he loved all of that. So on the afternoon of February 13th, he was at the American Legion Hall, just 3/4 of a mile from his house. And he was with his older brother, who was 15 at the time. So Mark wanted to go home early because he wanted to watch a war movie. So he left the hall first. But I mean, he's just walking home because, like I said, it's just down the street from his house. So his mom actually, I think I read that she had worked at the American Legion Hall, I think. So she was there as well. So by the time his brother got home, a couple hours later, Mark still wasn't at home. So, and by the time the mom got home in the evening, he still wasn't home. So 10 hours after he went missing, his mom called the cops. Then one of the saddest things, though, is Mark's mom didn't have enough money to buy actual picture prints of her kids. So she couldn't even give the police a recent picture of him. So they had to do a police sketch of Mark so that the police would have something to go on to try to find him. So I thought that was just awful. And they said that because in these docuseries that I watched, his brother was actually interviewed, and he's the one that said that. So yeah, and hearing his testimony of that is just, it's heart-wrenching. So unfortunately, Mark was found 6 days later by a man walking his dog in a parking lot outside of some type of office building in Southfield, which is 5 miles from where he was abducted. He was found, so it was kind of like, I don't want to say like a strip mall type of deal, but there was a bunch of different office buildings around, and like,
yeah, so it was like an office park.
Different types of parking lots by that was separated by like the brick walls, like the half brick walls.
Yeah.
So he was found fully clothed in what he was in the day that he was abducted. Now this is Michigan in February, so there's snow on the ground. So he was found on a snowbank by one of those half brick walls.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that his cause of death was asphyxiation. So there were ligature marks on both his wrists and ankles, but he was not bound when he was found. They also found that he had been sexually assaulted. So they did collect a single hair from Mark's body, but they didn't have a match for it just yet, obviously. The really strange thing, though, was that both Mark and his clothes were clean. Like somebody had washed his clothes and had given him a bath or something.
Oh.
And yeah. So that was the weirdest thing, honestly. But the contents of his stomach showed that he had been fed and he wasn't starved in the 6 days that he was gone. So somebody was feeding him, they cleaned him, the whole nine, but he was asphyxiated. So Art Sloan was thought of as at first as a suspect for Mark. He had already been convicted of sodomy in Pennsylvania, and he was living in Southfield at the time that Mark was found.
Oh, that's uncomfortable.
Yes. So he had been recently released from prison, and he was working as a tow truck driver and a mechanic in Farmington Hills.
Okay.
This is all right in the same type of area, I believe. I think Farmington Hills may have been a little bit of a further distance, but all pretty much in the same area.
Well, it's
So
kind of
they-
like here in Los Angeles. It's like, okay, there's downtown LA, yes, but then around it
Right.
you've got all these different. Yeah, okay. I
right.
gotcha.
I mean, we're talking about Detroit. It's
It's
big as
same
well.
thing. Yeah.
So they had impounded his car and they collected some evidence from his car, but they didn't find any physical evidence at the time to link him to Mark's murder, so they couldn't keep him.
Ugh.
So it was 4 months later. This is where it takes a weird, gross turn. 4 months later, after Mark was killed, in 255 miles north of Oakland County, in the north end of Lake Michigan, police were busting a child pornography / molestation operation in North Fox Island.
Ugh.
So backstory. So I'm going to go away from the Oakland County child killer for a second. And we're going to talk about North Fox Island, as much as nobody wants to do that. So North Fox Island was a smaller island that was purchased by Francis, aka Frank Sheldon, sometime prior to the 70s. So Sheldon came from a very, very wealthy family. He went to fucking Yale, and he ended up being a very wealthy business owner / philanthropist who turned the island into a boys' camp for troubled teens.
Nope.
Heavy quotations.
Nope.
He made an airplane runway for his private plane. He put some buildings on there.
Nope.
He did the whole thing.
Nope.
Yeah, he's real gross.
That screams human trafficking.
Yep. So when he got it up and running, per se, he would fly the boys out there to the island on his private plane, anywhere from like 5 to 6 boys at a time. And they would stay out there for, X amount of days. Yep. And then he would fly them back. So the boys' age would range anywhere from as young as 8 to 9 and up to teens. But average, I would say around 12-ish.
Mm.
Yeah. So this camp, again, heavy quotations around that, worked for 2 summers, the summer of 75 and summer of 76. Yeah.
Very relevant.
Yep. So needless to say, again, it wasn't a fucking camp. So Sheldon actually ran a child pornography ring from North Fox Island that he would let other big money businessmen, politicians, high profile dirtbags, he would let them visit the island, fly in on their private planes. And they would pay to molest the boys that were there, as well as buying the child pornography. Yep. People suck and I hate them all.
My stomach is actually turning.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have eaten.
Unfortunately, it's not going to get any better. So there were cameras, and actually, you know what? The docuseries that I watched, they actually interviewed a couple of the men that were there as boys.
Oh
So,
my God.
yep. So there were cameras pretty much everywhere on the island. And that's actually what one of the men said. He said they would be, because they have free reign of the island. I mean,
Because it's an island.
because it's an island
Uh-huh.
and nobody else is there. So they'd have free reign. So they'd go screw around and just kind of run through the timber. And they said one of them said that he would see cameras in trees and stuff. So like everything was being recorded. Everything that they did was being recorded.
See,
So
now if it were an actual camp, like if it was like, I don't know, if it was like a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout camp of some sort where it was like, we want to, put surveillance in the woods, for kids' safety, like that I wouldn't feel so weird about, but that's fucking gross.
yep,
That's
sure
so
is.
Ugh.
Yep. So another thing that the man had said is that it's pretty much as soon as they got to the island, the guys, because I'm going to talk about other men that were implicated in this as well, they would immediately tell the boys, hey, why don't you go ahead and strip down and head down to the water? It's really cool. There's no girls around. Nobody's going to see you. It's just us boys. It's just us guys. It's
Oh
totally
no.
okay. Strip down. Let's go skinny dipping. Yep. Yep. So they would really honestly want them to walk around everywhere naked. And the guys that again that were interviewed, they were like, yeah, we wouldn't, just the beach, but then once we got our free time that we could go do whatever. Like one of them said, hey, let's go find snakes because we think that's cool and we're 12-year-old
And their
boys.
children, yeah.
Exactly. So they would go, and that's what they'd be doing out in the timber, and they'd see the cameras. So they used the cabins, the buildings that he had put there to record the pornography videos. So what's the worst thing about this, while there were other men that were busted for this, when Sheldon got wind that they had a warrant to arrest him on child pornography and molestation charges, he fled to Amsterdam and was never fucking caught or sentenced or convicted or anything for any of it.
Oh my
That
God.
man never had to pay for his shit that he did. Nope, he fled, never found.
Put me in a room with a chainsaw with him.
Seriously, can't. They couldn't find him. They're assuming that he fled to Amsterdam because they think that that was part of where he was selling to. But yeah, nobody found him. That's it.
God.
So I'm gonna leave it at that for the time being, but I'm gonna be referring back to it later.
Okay.
So we're going back to Southern Michigan. This time Royal Oak, and this is at the end of 1976. So still in Oakland County, but Royal Oak is where we're at right now. So in the evening of December 22nd, 12-year-old Jill Robinson was at home with her mom and her sister. Her parents had divorced sometime before, but her dad actually didn't live far from them. I think it was just a few blocks away, I guess. So around 6:30, her mom was actually wanting her to help make dinner, but Jill was already mad at her mom for something early in the day, something silly. I mean, she's 12. They had a small argument about Jill. She didn't want to help make food. I think her sister was interviewed, I think, in one of these docuseries, and it was like making biscuits or something, and she was mad, and she's like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to run away.
Well, you're a preteen girl, and those are usually the worst creatures on the planet.
The worst age, right?
Yeah. So I get it.
You're
mad at your mom. You don't want
to.
Yeah.
Parents suck, and nobody's cool, and everything. I mean,
Right.
You're in junior high essentially.
Exactly.
Nobody has fun in junior high.
No.
So, so she threatens she's going to run away. Her mom tells her, you know what? Go outside, cool off, think about what you're doing, and come back in whenever you're ready to not be stop, you know. So she grabs her backpack and she takes off on her bike. So some think that her intention was to go to her dad's, but she never made it there. So she was supposedly seen by someone on her bike around 7:30ish, but she never made it anywhere else. So the next day her bike was found behind a local hobby store, but a few days later on the 26th, someone found her body on the side of the road. It was on I-75 and this was near Troy, 8 miles from where the area she was abducted from.
Off of an interstate?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh.
So she was placed on her back in the snow, just like Mark was. And she was killed by a gunshot to her face. So
oh no.
they actually suspect that she was killed there on the side of the road where she was found. And what's strange about her, there was no evidence of any sexual abuse, but it was speculated that they may have tried to asphyxiate her there and then basically shot in the face kind of for good measure, like they weren't sure if she was actually dead or not. So that's why she was shot in the face.
Oh.
It's speculation. They think she may, like I said, they may have tried to do that, but ultimately,
Do you think
she was
maybe she fought?
There's no evidence of that, though. So I don't know. So, but just like with Mark, she had been fed. She was not starved. There was no evidence of that. And her body and clothes had been washed, just like with Mark.
That's
so
very strange.
Yes. So someone had come forward and said they had actually seen a blue Pontiac parked by where Jill's body was found. And this was sometime before she was found, but honestly, not much was done about it. There wasn't a search. They just said blue Pontiac, and that was that. So now we're moving on to January 2nd, 1977. So Mark was killed in February of 1976. Jill was in December of 1976. So pretty big gap there.
Yeah.
January 2nd, 1977. So just a month after Jill, in Berkeley, 10-year-old Kristine Mihelich went to the 7-Eleven down the street from her house. She went to buy a magazine, some teen magazine or something like that.
How old is she?
She was 10.
10. Okay.
Yep. So this was like early-ish afternoon. So by 6 p.m. when she still hadn't got home, her mother reported her missing. So by this time, the news media, they were not messing around. They immediately put her disappearance on the news by 11 p.m. So, because normally there's the whole 24-hour whatever, you have to wait a certain amount of time to report people, but by the time
I'm sorry, but if it's a child, then
well, and they have two children that had gone missing, and then they found them dead. So, like I said, they weren't messing around. It was on the news by 11 o'clock. The police weren't waiting either. So as soon as they got a call from the parents of Kristine, they immediately started their search. So
I good on those police, because there's been like, it's a child, yes, but there's also been such a gap in between these that right away they were like, boom, not messing around.
Right.
Like that. Yep. That's good on them.
So they were very determined to find Kristine. So it was after Kristine's disappearance that the police had formed a task force to find the person or persons that were responsible for the 2 deaths and then this abduction. Mm-hmm. So this was actually one of the biggest task forces formed in the U.S. at this point in time. It was like hundreds of officers that was on this task force. It was kind of nuts. It was amazing that they were able to do this. So one of the people that ended up being on the task force was actually Kristine's grandpa. He was a police officer at the time. So they knew that Kristine was last seen at the 7-Eleven where she had bought the magazine, because that was confirmed. She got there and she bought the magazine. There's the store clerk there confirmed it. So one thing that her sister had said in an interview on the documentaries was that the picture that the news media had and the police were showing everyone was actually a picture of Kristine with her long hair, which that's another, I will post the picture as well. But she said that not even a week before her abduction, she had gotten it all cut off, like above her shoulders. So the picture wasn't actually super accurate for an exact description.
Oh.
So unfortunately, because I don't know if they had a picture of her with her short hair at all. So, but unfortunately, a mailman had found Kristine's body partially buried in the snow, and she was fully dressed, just like the other two, in what she was abducted in. And at the end of a dead-end street in Franklin Village. Now, this was 19 days later. This was on the 21st when she was found. So she was kept for 19 full days. So the worst part about this, though, is they think that she had only been dead for a couple of hours before she was found. So they don't, yeah, so which is awful to think about. But her cause of death was asphyxiation, and there were no signs of sexual assault again on her. So just like with the other two, she had been fed the entire time, and she was cleaned, and her clothes were washed. So there was an impression in the snow. This is pretty interesting. So there was actually an impression in the snow by her body, because it was kind of a bankment that she was in of snow. And it was an impression of a bumper and a tailpipe. So they figured out that it was actually the bumper and tailpipe of a Pontiac Tempest. So that's
Here comes
notable.
The blue Pontiac.
Well, obviously they can't tell a color, but that's interesting, since somebody had seen a blue Pontiac, they think.
That's crazy that they got
where they found Jill.
That's crazy that they got the exact like vehicle just from the imprint.
Well, if you think about it, some of those older model of vehicles, 60s, 70s models, they're all very, I mean, they're easier to tell apart than some vehicles nowadays, some of the newer models, you know what I mean?
I guess so.
So bumpers were kind of specific, and so I mean, but yeah, they figured out Pontiac Tempest. I mean, Pontiacs back then were boats. So
everything back then was a boat.
Well, I know that, but especially Pontiacs.
Yeah.
So we will be talking about another vehicle later on too. Just a heads up there.
Okay.
It won't be a Pontiac though. So where she was found was actually 7.5 miles from where she was abducted. So wherever she was kept for 19 days, she was only found 7.5 miles from where she was abducted. So in the docuseries, this is kind of interesting too. So in the docuseries, someone was interviewed about Kristine's abduction. They didn't show his face, but he said it was one of those where they blacked out his face. But he said he was 9 at this point in time when she was abducted. He said that he was playing across the street from the 7-Eleven, and he saw Kristine exit the store. So he said that he saw someone in a police officer's uniform talk to her, and he saw her get into a vehicle with him, but it was not a cop car. He called the tip line because there was obviously, with the task force, they have this tip line that they have.
Mm-hmm.
He called the tip line and he told them what he saw, but the person on the other line didn't believe him. And they
because
even
he's 9.
He was 9. And they even went as far as scolding him for calling and telling him not to waste their time with silly things and lies like
Oh
that.
my God.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. So he even told his teacher, but she also thought that he made it up. So nothing was done with that at that point in time.
Oh my God. That's so
Aggravating, right? Yep.
okay. I know adults will admit to doing something that they didn't do. They'll
Yeah.
confess to crimes, and they'll also call hotlines and and say some crazy shit. But
Yep.
I'm almost more inclined to believe a child in this situation.
It's tough. It's really, really tough.
I know.
Because you never know. But in this type of case, I think literally any lead should be followed up, no matter how outlandish it sounds.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but if a
So, I mean,
if a 9-year-old was, present enough to realize, hey, that's weird, and this girl that I know has gone missing, and had like the sense enough to call to give
yeah,
a tip, I think that's something.
yeah.
Because at 9 years old, I don't even
Mhm.
remember 9 years old.
I know. So, this is where it gets a little hairy. So by January 25th,
Not that it's not already hairy.
I know, but this is where it gets it just every aspect of this case gets hairier and hairier as you go further. So she was found on the 21st.
I'm ready. I'm holding on to my pig.
Yep. By January 25th, only 4 days later, they had a suspect in custody that honestly looked pretty good for the crimes. So he was a known pedophile who had previously been charged. He had served time for molesting a boy in Flint previously. So he told the cops that he knew who the killer was. He told them it was Christopher Bush. They were friends who they found out actually worked together in the molestation of young boys. They had, I didn't say his name. Good Lord. This is Gregory Green was this man's name. He's the one that implemented Christopher Bush.
Okay.
So they had Green take a polygraph about these crimes, and supposedly he passed. However, he didn't have the money to post bond, the bond that they had set for him, because obviously they set it pretty high. So he got to stay in jail. So let's talk about Chris Bush. They had to be smart with what they did with Bush, because he was the son of none other than H. Lee Bush, vice president of General Motors.
Oh.
General Motors. Mm-hmm. So he grew up very wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time that he was in school, they were rich as fuck. And he even went to some private school overseas somewhere because they got to like move around and shit with his dad being the vice president. So he had daddy's money protecting him all the way up to this point until obviously he was implemented by Green.
How old was he at this point?
I don't remember. He was in his 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in his 20s. So this is why he didn't have a record, like a real record at this time, because obviously, again, he's had daddy's money to protect him.
Yeah.
So when they were able to get a warrant to search his apartment or his car or something, I don't know, but they found a trunk full of child pornography, rope, and a gun. All, things that you want to find in someone's house.
Ugh.
So this is actually what got Bush arrested. And then they questioned him about the murders as well. So they found out that Bush was obsessed with young boys. He took a polygraph about the murders. And again, he allegedly passed that polygraph. And I say allegedly for a reason that I will explain later. So they set his bond very high. But again, since his family was filthy rich, his bail was posted with no problem and he was released. So he ended up just getting charged with possession of child porn at this point in time, but they still had him in mind as a suspect for the murders as well.
Right.
With Green as well.
Okay.
So he ended up getting sentenced on the child pornography case, but since he had no other record, he was only charged $1,000 and was put on probation.
That should
$1,000.
that should never
$1,000.
that should never ever for child pornography, that should never ever ever be that should never be a slap
Probationable?
on the wrist. No, no. You should do time for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope.
You should do
Probation.
time and lots of therapy.
Probation. $1,000. $1,000 is what he paid. Yeah. In Birmingham on March 16th, only 7 days after Bush was bonded out of jail, 11-year-old Tim King asked his brother for a nickel to buy a candy bar at a drugstore near his house. How wholesome is that? So he never made it home. And just in only a couple hours, the police were out searching for Tim. Because again, they weren't wasting any time whatsoever. Since this is now child number 4.
Yeah.
So 2 days later, a woman had said that she had seen Tim talking to a man next to a blue gremlin with the white stripes and gave a description of the man. So this was the first description that we got for this person is taking the children. So she said that he had sideburns and his hair was thinning a little, maybe, but I mean, it was very dark hair.
Yeah.
Maybe in his 20s or 30s, not sure, but he had like real thick sideburns. So I've got a police sketch that I will post as well.
Okay.
So there was an all-out manhunt for literally anyone who owned or drove a blue gremlin. I mean, the officers and police force, the task force was like obsessed with finding the person that matched this description in a blue gremlin.
Right.
So the chief even told all of the officers literally just to pull every blue gremlin that they saw, pull them over, no matter what they were doing. So obviously you need probable cause to pull somebody over, but the chief said he'd take the heat about it, just pull them over. Doesn't matter what they're doing, pull a blue gremlin over.
Good.
There were some people getting pulled over like 6 or 7 times with their blue gremlin. So they said they didn't really get any grief about this though, because everyone knew that that's what they were looking for. So even though you were getting pulled over 4 to 5 times, they didn't really, they weren't upset about it.
I don't think I think I would be a little aggravated, like, please, you already got me. But
Right.
I think I would be like, okay, I understand. I wouldn't be upset about that either.
It was men and women getting pulled over too. So they didn't get anywhere with this tip. Literally nowhere. There was a press conference held where Tim's parents actually pleaded with the kidnapper to let Tim go or at least treat him well.
Oh, at least treat him well?
It's, yeah.
That's
they
even
showed
more
part
heartbreaking.
Of it. And I'm going to try to get through this without crying because they told Tim that they loved him and they couldn't wait for him to be returned to them and that they would have his favorite meal waiting for him, which was fried chicken. Yeah. Yeah. It's rough because on March 22nd, 6 days after Tim was taken, his body was found on a snowy ditch in Livonia, which was actually just in the next county south of Oakland County, which was called Wayne County.
Okay.
So, yeah, I need a breather there.
Yeah, we're both crying.
Yeah. So the officer said that they actually tried to revive Tim when they found him because he was in quote, and this is a quote from them, he was still warm.
Oh
when
my
they found
God.
him. Yep. So they think, again, he was killed right before he was discovered. So his cause of death was asphyxiation, and they found ligature marks on his wrists and ankles. He had been sexually assaulted like Mark. So it's notable that the boys were sexually assaulted, the girls were not. So both his body and his clothes were cleaned, just like with the other 3 victims.
Mm-hmm.
And they found a hair on Tim's body that they couldn't place either. So
Did it
they
match the hair that they found on Mark's body?
yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we got something.
There's something, yes. I don't know if they realized it yet, though. I don't know if they were able to tell that yet.
Okay.
Because we'll talk about the hairs later, too. The last thing that was a slap in the face to his family was his stomach contents. They found chicken, which was his favorite meal. Yep.
I'm so mad.
Which could mean that the killer
Saw
watched
it.
that press conference and yeah. Yep. I'm telling you, this dude or dudes awful. So he was 21 miles from where he was abducted. So unfortunately, that's where I'm going to leave you with part 1. There's just way too much shit to put into one episode. So you'll have to wait a week to find out the conclusion of the still ongoing investigation of the Oakland County child killer or killers.
Oh my God.
Sorry for that huge downer. Sorry to leave you on such a sad note as well, but
this is the first time I've cried in an episode. Thank you.
Same. Same. And I apologize if I made you guys cry as well, because that was
it's rough.
Yeah, that press conference that they showed in the docuseries, it had his mom and dad were sitting there, and his dad was, saying it. And really, the Kings have been the most active family with all of this. His dad, I don't remember what his dad's name is, but he's an attorney, actually. So I'll be talking more about him in the second episode as well. So yeah. So
yeah, because I knew about this case, but I didn't know any details about it.
Yeah.
The only thing that I knew about it is the little bit that you told me before we ever started recording, when you were already researching it, and I was already getting pissed off at the very little thing that you told me.
I look, my chest and my neck is so red and hot and because
broke out. So is the side of your face too, by the way.
Because this case pisses me off so bad. It's just awful, and it's gonna get worse. Sorry about that. So it's aggravating. It's aggravating.
I want to hold my piggy, cry, and then scream into my pillow.
I know. Yeah, and in Mark's, the very first victim, Mark Stebbins, his brother is the one that they interview, and he was 15 in 76. So he's up there in age now, and he's just this frail looking, like, precious older man, and he's sitting there talking about little Mark, and it's just heart-wrenching. Absolutely heart-wrenching.
Yeah, because
same thing with Tim King. Tim King's dad is in his 80s, and hearing
is that
him
the
talk
guy
about
that you
all
were?
of it. Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Because okay, like, I'm not a child person. Like, I'm not one to, like, walk up to children on the street and be like, "Oh, what a precious baby," because I don't do that.
We have clearly made that known.
Yeah, like,
however,
obviously, like, you should never harm a child. You should never do anything terrible to a child. Just because I'm not a child person doesn't mean I'm like, yeah, go ahead, But like, it's elderly people for me, like, that just like really get me in my soul, and that really hurts.
Once when I was done watching, the docuseries, the 2-part one, that they got to me, and I was crying by the end.
Oh my God.
So
you can follow us on Facebook at
2K Away.
And then you can follow us on Instagram at 2K Away Podcast. We've got a Gmail. It's 2K Away Podcast at gmail.com. We have a YouTube channel. It's 2K Away Podcast. And every time you type the word 2, it's actually the number 2. Okay, we'll see you next
week
episode
for part 2
for part 2
of the Oakland County child killer.
Let's finish this out in 2 parts. I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh no, it'll be done in 2 parts. Trust me.
Good.
It all comes to a weird head for episode 2, because Tim King, he's the last death. So if that tells you how much shit I'm going to be putting into the next episode, there's not even any more deaths. Yeah.
Yikes.
So.
Oh, also real quick, before I go, so my last episode with Rasputin, the beginning of the episode, I said something in Russian and I forgot to say what I even said. And I just said, hello, friends. Because I forgot to mention it. So
if anybody was wondering, that's what it is.
Yeah. So
then we will
keep
see
listening. You. Yeah.
We'll
see you next time.
episode.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.